Hello, comrades. It's Premier Rever, and I wanted to give a little class on how to level. So I'm not sure exactly how long this will take, but what I want to do is start leveling out some areas where we can build for the future. So, but this is not going to be about, I am on my regular map, and what I do here is going to count. So in a second, I'm going to do, for what in my regular series is a little bit cheaty, but at the same time, that's okay. Well, for the sake of the video, we will move forward. And the little cheaty thing I'm going to do is, rather than build this legitimately, and I have built like everything on this map pretty much legitimately, except for a few electrical connections and things like that. We need a construction office within range, and I know that this is about the limit of my existing construction offices. So I'm going to eventually build roads down here, but we'll purchase this with our dollars since we have a few extra of those. And for this one moment, we'll play forward time. Now, when you're leveling and you're just doing it with a normal construction office, you're definitely better off pausing time anyway, because otherwise what's going to happen is you're going to put some vehicles in here so that you can level. And when you do that, they're going to go get fuel. Well, we don't have a fuel station anywhere near, and if we had roads connected, it's going to be a problem. Plus, I don't want to take away from my regular map and the time that I would have spent on there. This is when I say, hey, I'm going to go leveling for a while, and when I come back in an episode or the next episode and things are level, 90% of the time I have 99.9% of the time I have time paused. So I'm not going to get into how leveling works 100%, but you should, I hope you know that you can turn off the purchasing, right? So even if you're playing where you're auto building things, I definitely still recommend you can go to any one of these, but I like to open the road menu, turn off your auto do with rubles and auto do with dollars, auto build. And that way, when you go to level, we need an excavator. So if we did turn on our dollars for a half a second, right? Boom, we can do it with the money even though you're further away. But in order to do this for, quote, free, you're going to have to turn off the rubles. And also, like I said, if you have gas stations attached, which we don't here, but if we did, you would want to pause time unless you wanted them to go get gas to be slightly more realistic about it, right? This is sort of definitely taking advantage of a game mechanic by pausing time if we had a gas station right here. And if you ever build a construction office, I recommend you build a gas station right next door. So in any event, what we need in order to do this is two different vehicles. If we're going to raise or lower terrain, we generally always need an excavator. If you're going to use either of these leveling tools, then you need a bulldozer. So what I'm going to do is come in here, and the best bulldozers you can get is this American one, this United States one here. So it's got the highest speed of any of them, big bulldozer. And then the best excavator you can get is this excavator here, which is the E7.2, but whatever. It's also the best one you can get. Normally, if you put many of them in here, you can speed up how fast this all happens. I don't like to do that because did you notice the prices on these things? Like if we come to the excavator, it was $500,000 for that excavator. So the pricing on this map is getting out of hand since we're at $19.99. Like if we're not self-sufficient on goods, it's just catastrophic. So I'm going to get by with just these two. What I'll do is I'll lay out what I'm going to do, and then I'll probably fast forward it. I'll probably record everything. I may have to cut some of it. I don't want this video to be super long for a tutorial. If you don't want to watch the fast forwarding, if I remember, I'll put a note to tell you when the fast forwarding ends. And I'm not going to do too much, but I want to give you guys a good flavor of two different ways that I level large areas or level pretty easily. One is very related to the other. So what you really need to do before you start leveling, because leveling a large area is tedious, is you really need to get an idea of how much room you're going to take up, right? Now there's two different ways that are decent to mark the ground. One is to come over here and like say, all right, well we have, you know, if I back up a little bit, you know, I know I'm going to want to have a train line coming in here, right? Somewhere. You know, you don't have to know exactly. But there you go. So we put a road that's going to represent our train line coming in here, which is like right here, right? We'll also probably have a road paralleling it, most likely, because if nothing else, we're going to run out of the ability to level somewhere. I'm just going to try to, you know, I'm zoomed way out, I know. Whoop, see, and that's exactly it. So that's a straight line to there, you know, and then I'll come here. You know, these roads are free, you know, so it's not too bad. So if I said that I want that to go this way, yeah, let's delete this one for half a second. I know that that's enough room that we can get these quarries in here that I want, just because if it's not, I can move this over. You know, don't underestimate how much room you need to effectively do your rail. And I don't mean this to be an entire planning session, but it is important that you think ahead as best you can. Now, what I'm picturing here is, let me go, another thing you can do to try to remind yourself is, you know, like you can name these things that are just, you know, you can put like notes on there like ton. Yeah, you can't type too fast. It doesn't like that. Start. So I know I'm going to put a town in here. And towns are, you know, fairly big. Now, I don't know how many people we're going to in here, but I want to leave like a good amount of room, right? Like this kind of whole area here will be for putting a town in. And we're also going to need like railroad tracks probably in and out of it, and busing and many other things. So, you know, the other thing I want to do, not that I'm that worried about it, but yeah, we'll probably have a train coming this way at some point. Doesn't matter. We don't need to figure everything out. We just need to get it to where we're not wasting too much time leveling. So what I'm picturing is, I don't really like, I drew this prefabs. I don't know if you guys can read that, but the prefabs I planned on being right here. I may end up moving them closer to the cement because there's a lot of room for the like cement. So I think prefabs are going to come over here. So let's, you know what, let's delete this one first. Oop, where did I go? I completely spun myself around. There we go. Let's come here and we're going to get rid of this one. And we're going to come over here and, yeah, I'm just going to put another one here. All right, rename it prefab. Because I want a little more room for this. I don't know how much room we're actually going to take up with some of these things. But because we're not doing too much here, I don't think this is going to take a huge amount of room. So we're going to delete this one as well. And so what I'm picturing is probably a little bit further up this hill than I had it right there, because that's why I kind of took out the prefab. I don't want to jam up my town there. So I'm picturing, you know, like maybe more like here. There's another reason for this too, because I have thought about this more than just in the last 2 minutes or 8 minutes that the video is. So I'm going to rename this to car manufacturing, right? So we're going to try to put car manufacturing up in this area. Now, what I want to do also, part of my strategy is that I want to have a distribution yard, which takes up like a good amount of space, like all this kind of area, right? So between this and this is what we're going to level. Now, it's not going to necessarily always be level. You don't have to have things level. You just have to have them flat enough you can build things. And the more level it is, the better. But at some point, you drive yourself insane. Now, be warned, this will take a while. And we'll talk about the real lifetime in a minute here. So, what I need to do now is kind of decide on what we're going to do. We kind of have anytime you see these mountains, they take significantly longer to level, right? We don't have to have, like I said, everything doesn't have to be level, and you can also like tier things. So, but have an idea in the back of your mind what you want to do. So one of the things I'm thinking of is this area over here is pretty high, right? So it wouldn't really be much of a problem to bring a train line in like right across here. So what I'm going to do is just sort of this is all like planning 102 in a sense. Like I'm going to bring this back until it turns yellow where you can do it, right? And we're going to just do this. And this will just give us a better idea. Like you'll be able to start seeing how these 2 points relate to each other, right? And we can also, by the way, use this to level off of potentially. But you can, it's awful hard sometimes to see. And I know I don't have the wireframe on at this point. You don't, I'm just showing you don't really have to have it. So we're going to come back and we're going to do this again. Yeah, see it's, now by the way, when you see this, let me zoom in a bit. You may, I don't know how well you can see. I'm going to come back more or less from the same place. See how that's red? But then I come down here and it's green, but you see those red dots there in the middle? That means that area can't be leveled. So we're going to have to come down to like someplace like here. And then see how it's leveling a little bit more? I don't know if you can tell that. And then a little bit more. And it's playing a little game with us. Now we might be able to come all the way. No, can't come here yet, but we're getting close. Now, this will make a nice little path for our trains to get right over there, the ones that want to go in there, and it'll give us, but look how much you can tell that if we wanted to level the whole area, it would just kind of be massive, right? I'm doing this as much for a gauge as I am anything else. Now, the other truth of the matter is there's a bit of a hill here. So what I want to do now is just kind of lower this area, right? Just, if we're going to bring a train through there, you know what I'm saying? Like we don't necessarily want that high. Now the good thing is this train isn't built yet, so we shouldn't have too many issues. But see, there we go. We can kind of make a nice stretch. Now, I'm not going to worry about leveling this during this episode, but what I would probably do is just, if you come kind of right next to it or on it, at some point it'll turn yellow again. Does that make sense? And it'll bring it up. I'm not too worried about this, and then as it brings that up, you can just sort of bring this along the line. Let's get it to where it's green. Yeah, and you can even, I can see, it might be hard to see on the YouTube because it's so far away. But yeah, see, there you go. So we widen this out. Now the other thing, now is probably a good time, we could have turned on the wireframe. What you want to do is look and see how that last little maneuver we did has a red spot here, but otherwise that's relatively, we have some orange, but it's relatively white. Now if we come off to the side, yeah, you can see where this is much more level. But again, this might be a little bit high, right? It's sort of, see how you can get a different perspective on it where you can see this is high and this is low. Not that big a deal, not what we're worried about, but just when it comes to making your tracks. But this is, the question now is how does this relate to the other areas around it, right? Because what we want to do is if we want to level the whole area, you don't want to do too much work. You kind of want to find what you're willing to do, like a balance point, meaning imagine, we're going to pick one point that would be the least amount of work because it's level. Like in other words, if we decided to go down here and start leveling, look, oh, this is real nice level. What's going to happen is by the time we get to here, we're just going to be taking a whole mountain out. And the same thing if we pick the highest point here, right? This highest, and I don't know that this is the highest, it's one of the higher points, right? We would have to fill in like a ton. So because this is already at this level, right? Which, hey, like take advantage of the ground that's already level. But there could be an argument for filling some of this in, right? Because it would be less work to maybe fill this in than it would be to try to do more over here. Or maybe, because by the time we might want it up this high. So you would come across here like we just did and fill in from that hill to this hill, right? If you could. And then that might turn into less work than trying to cut away a mountain. But in this particular case, what I want to do is get over this hill so we can do the same kind of gauging, right? So if I come here and try to do the whole thing at once, like coming back to here, it's going to be too much. But what we can do is just kind of slowly cut into this hill. It's actually a pretty powerful tool, really. It's way more powerful than it used to be in the old days. Because what I'm going to try to do is find some spot that's going to cause the least the least work. Now, if the tool stops working, turn it yellow and then come back again and it'll work again. All right, but what we've done to some extent is kind of given ourselves a gauge where we can kind of zoom in here and say, oh, see, that's still way, way high, right? So, you know, do your best to estimate how many and then go down this hill a little bit and come back here and we'll level again and see if that looks a little more level. Now, once you get kind of close and you decided that this is what you want to do, we need to pick that magic spot, right? See, like I can tell that's still kind of high. And you don't have to be this exact. It's kind of your call, right? But we can bring that down even more. See, that's looking pretty good. Maybe a little bit higher over there, right? But that gives us some kind of a gauge as to where we're heading, right? Now, if we think we're, like, to me, this seems like a pretty reasonable spot because we're not going to have, this is a pretty big area. We're not going to have to do too much to fill this in to make it level, right? Like, it's going to be work, but it's not going to be like we're raising it up 40 feet, right? So, yeah, I kind of like that. Now, the other question is, where does that put us on this side, right? Oops, I didn't want to build that road. I'm going to spin around. Yeah, so let's spin around a little bit. And then I'm going to come to here and say, okay, well, I think, oops. Sorry, I like to use the paved roads, but it doesn't really matter which one. Now I'm going to come here, and I'm going to do that same kind of move side to side sort of trick, right? Till that turns yellow. And I just want to get this guy a little bit wider so that we can take a leveling tool and run it down this little cut into the mountains so that we can start setting up what our level is going to be. And we're going to use that in a few minutes here. Yeah, so that's all you need. Just enough to get your leveling tool down through here. So let's say that for right now, we're going to guess that this is going to be our level spot. So I'm going to come in with the terrain, this center leveling tool, and I'm going to shrink it down a bit, right? And then we're just going to come in here and see how close our estimate was. Now, see how those sides are filling in? Like, you know, like it would take you a lot longer. You got to be careful that you're actually level. We don't need a lot leveled. We just need enough, you know. And you can go too fast. Yeah, we did pretty well with guessing what level is. Now see, now it's starting to raise it up out here a bit. See that? I don't know if you guys can see. Now once we get out of that valley, we can expand this tool, but the reason for expanding the tool, like you don't want to end up leveling more with this tool than you kind of have to. All right, so there we go. So we have what should be, you know, a reasonably level thing from one side of this hill to the other. And then now what we can do is start taking a look, you know, how far out this way can we realistically go, right? So we could sit here. Let's shrink this guy back down a little bit. And you don't necessarily want to use the tiniest tool. Now, what will happen with this tool is eventually it's going to hit a point where it's not going to want to level for you that much more because it's like too steep, right? So what you can do if you really want to push this out further, which we may see, this all looks a lot higher to me, right? So we could do one of two things. In this case, we're probably better off just leveling down here because we kind of already have a spot that's pretty close to level, right? We'll just bring this down from this point. See that? So now we have a point out here that we can decide whether it's worth doing all that. But if you didn't have that point, I like to use the school buildings, but you can use any one just because they have it's almost like a palette. You have the kindergarten, which is reasonably small, right? And then you have this school, which is a little bit bigger. And then you have like these big, huge things that you can use. And the residencies are like in between still, right? Kind of my favorite tool is the school. And the reason I mention that is you really want to get it to where you're, see there's a little red dot in the middle of that building, and now it turned red, but as long as it's yellow, you can level. It doesn't matter what height you're trying to level up to, right? As long as you don't move too fast and you don't move off of the level spot with your red dot. Like you don't want to kind of jump ahead. You got to watch out for some buildings will let you level, but they don't actually level everything. So that's the other thing nice about these school buildings is that they're pretty solid, right? It won't necessarily level all of that green. It levels like where it needs to put the building only, if that makes sense. Call it the building's footprint. Now, another thing to note, you can do the same thing by pushing in, right? So like we wouldn't necessarily do it here, but you may be at a point that it's too high to just use the leveling tool, so you can do the same thing in reverse, right? Hope that makes sense. There we go. So now we have a line here, and we can do like the same thing. We know that this is sort of level here, right? So we can start by going and just seeing what we can do. Go back to our road tools. Because what we need to do is like go pick a point out over here. We're really not done planning out what level is because we don't know how far we can level over here, and it would be nice to just get, you know, a guesstimate, I guess you could call it. So we'll come here up, say it's going to be, so we'll see that's actually leveling down. Now one of the problems is because I made this so steep, but now it's leveling up, so that'll get us a little bit closer. I really didn't mean to build that road. That'll happen to you. It's all right, you can just delete it. Now what I want to do now is just see, we're just going to try to do a little bit of this from this direction, and you'll see why. I'm going to come back kind of far. The longer it is, the more to let you sort of go up this hill. So there you go. So see, we'll just get this to be a slope. And now the other thing is, yeah, like, there we go. So you just want to get rid of that really steep slope right here. And that looks, let's spin around, get another perspective. That doesn't look too bad as far as being level goes, which tells me that, going out here further really is an option, right? Because a lot of this is going to be really kind of easy. So let's see about just doing this one more time. Yeah, see, now it's filling back in what we took out, but that's okay. Right? That looks, we got a white line there. Now, again, you'll see what happens when it's really, you want to be able to have a little bit wider than this maybe, but oops, yeah, be careful. Yeah, you definitely want to start with where you know it's leveled, because even a little, yeah, and see, here's another problem. See, because I didn't make that very wide, it's fighting me, right? Because it's wanting to raise those sides before it levels ahead. So the thing to do there is just come back to your road tool. Try to pick something that's, fairly close, right? We'll level all this. Yeah, see, unfortunately, that's going back down because, you know what I should be doing? I should be doing this. That was kind of dumb on my part. Yeah, get this back up to where it needs to be. Oop, yeah, sometimes that happens too. Because you're leveling, the optics change in a sense. There we go. So we can level that, and then we can come over here and right. And then the other thing you can't, yeah, see, we took out way too much. So let's come back to here and just redo this one. Again, make sure this is not, you do not have to be, this is not NASA quality requirements kind of stuff, but we'll just kind of make this a little bit wider, and you can just sort of do that turn to the side trick. See, there we go. And again, we've already sort of decided that we can level out further. See, so now when we go to do this, we're not going to have to do so much with the leveling tool, which is slower. So, we can shrink that down a little bit. Kind of want to use the biggest tool you can. But see how it's raising that up? Yeah, see, we don't really want to go too fast. That's where the bigger tool actually does kind of help. Just want to, you know. Now you'll be amazed at how much you push this forward and find out that you weren't actually level, right? So as I get up to here, I'm going to say, okay, well, I'm not pushing too much at this point, but it sort of depends on your mood. Definitely get some music on, or a YouTube video like mine that you like to watch, and relax and enjoy yourself. Now, if you get tired of that, like I noticed that there's a little bit, it depends on your situation every time, but see how that's a little bit higher? Like we might be able to just help ourselves out a little bit, right? See how that raised that up quite a bit? Let's turn that yellow or red so we don't build the road again, and then we can even come here. And I'll try to remember where you stopped your actual leveling. Come back down the hill. Now keep in mind, we haven't, there we go, so that looks pretty good. Just sort of be patient about it, let that guy, you know, I don't know if you guys can see that well, but I'm pushing that yellow, like just, you know, just don't go so fast that you mess that up. But now the good news is what this is doing is giving us perspective, right? On what would be level, where we might be able to put things. You know, then you can kind of change your planning a little bit to suit it. Because, to be honest, what's to the left of us here is going to be a significant amount of leveling, right? I'm just going to push this guy a little bit further up till he kind of runs into, well, we can really kind of go pretty well till he runs into that hill a bit, right? I never really ran into the hill. Let's make sure I didn't mess up. Nope. Yeah, there he is. So now we're starting to level back down, right? There we go. So there's, you know, a level idea of where level is relative to this. And yet it's a pretty big area, but if you look at it, we only have to take the top off of this hill, and then we can fill in a bit of this, right? Like we're not having to lower everything down. Some of this comes with a bit of experience, that it, you know, but if you do a lot of this sort of legwork, then it becomes easier. Now, what we want to do now is see what's happening over here. See how, like, this is getting to be quite a bit higher, right? And you can get a better idea of how much higher just by, like, you know, what would we never do? We would... look, we have a nice space up there, but that's kind of getting far away, right? Like, what would, you know, when I say what would we never do, like, we would probably, you know, we would level this off, right? Like, we could bring this down a little bit, but it might also make sense to kind of go from this height, right? Just to see if we can't, you know, what that looks like. It's a lot easier to judge it if you do something like this. Because there's nothing wrong with having, like, you know, a level spot, and then, I mean, that's kind of a nice, I don't want to call it a gentle slope, but, you know, we can come in here, make that tool big, and we can see, you know, what that looks like relative to this. Now, the other thing is I know this is a level spot, right? So I'm going to make a nice big level spot here. And then I'm going to come up to here, and I'm going to sort of do this number. So that we have a, you know, we're starting to get an idea of what we're doing here. Turn that yellow, and then we can kind of do the same thing from here to here. Now, I can tell it's not perfect, but that's okay. It doesn't, we're not done yet, right? You can always fiddle with it to your heart's content, but there we go. Like, I think that's a nice sort of compromise, right? Now, one of the other things you might want to do at some point is, like, when you'll lose track of what you did. So you know, use these to kind of mark, like, this is a level spot, right? This is a level spot. This is a level spot. You could almost, you know, and this is what we really kind of leveled, was those places. So anything in between here and here. Now the reason I say that is what we need to do now, if we want to do this pattern, is we would level out this way, right? We'll level out this way, and we'll probably level, well, you know what, we'll see. It'd be nice to get it all the way over here, but that might be a little bit harder. And I'll show you what I mean in a minute. But let me start the fast forwarding and leveling process. We're already a half hour into this video. I hope that everything I said was useful to you. And like I said, if I remember, I'll try to put a note in here. But what I'm going to do is just cut the roads down and kind of do the same thing I did here, but now I'm going to try to do it this way. And when I get into hard spots, I'll stop and show you why they're hard. You know, because I can already see this might be a little bit difficult. But, you know, let me get started, and then, you know, I'll come back whenever that's done. I'm not sure if I'm going to cut the video or fast forward it, but we'll see. All right. Okay. I definitely am going to fast forward that portion because I want you guys to have seen it, at least in the fast forward action. But if you noticed, what I did was I just took our level and I pushed it in each of the three places that we pointed out until it got to be difficult, right? So at this point, it was starting to get hard just to use the leveling tool. Same thing here. We kind of pushed up against this hill. Now, you know, when it comes to here, you know, we're really, I mean, you can take out this mountain, but it's a lot of work, an awful lot of work. So we could push this in a little further if we had to. And over here, you know, we got to about here where it started to get a little bit hard. So I wanted to point out what you can do here is, you know, now that we have this over to that point, we can actually know that this is too high, right? And it doesn't look like it raises up too much, but we know that's not flat, even though it's white. So what I want to do is, it looks like this is going up about one block. So I want to come someplace like here, right? Let's get our level tool back out. And we can make it relatively small, right? And I just want to level a spot that's a little bit lower, right? And just sort of push that up there as best I can. You know, you can make it a little bigger if you want, but just so you know, that other portion took about less than 10 minutes. So, you know, getting this laid out is good. Now, the other thing I need to do is I don't know exactly the size of all of my buildings, right? There we go. I think that might be a fair thing I just did there. So we're going to come from here to here. Just sort of, again, the road leveling is just so much faster than everything else. There we go. So now I'll come back to where I know we were level, right? And just start pushing in again. I can see I'm still lowering it a little bit, but not nearly as much, right? And again, you want to be a bit patient. You know, bigger tool is a little easier because it levels further ahead of you, but then when you're in these valleys or if you're on a steep slope, it starts leveling the slope a lot more. Now I'm a little bit surprised we didn't run out of construction office range. We're certainly getting close to that. Yeah, let's make it a little bit bigger. Again, it all needs to be done. There we go. So now that's getting, I could tell when we hit that other hill over there, you know, it's going to start getting to that point in life where it starts becoming a little more difficult, right? But now what we want to do, let's just finish leveling that, is we want to turn and see how that relates to all of this, right? And then we also have to ask ourselves, how much room do we really want to level, right? You know, do we really need all of this space? Well, we're going to use most of it. You know, I definitely think down here, it's probably worth pushing into here. So in other words, what I'll do is this is where we start getting into building leveling territory. Technical University is really nice if you can get it to turn yellow like this because it has this real flat edge on two sides, right? So get it to the two sides that you want. And then what we can do is just, you know, start pushing in. And this is faster than the leveling tool, if nothing else, because it's more focused, right? Like you're only leveling, like you're leveling the maximum in a lot of ways, but you're only leveling a few dots there each time. Where that other tool seems to spin and whirl and, you know, just do funny things. Like it seems like it's leveling things you don't really want leveled. And as long as you don't push it in there too far, now let's step back and see, did we get in there? Yeah, see, I don't know how much more I'm going to level. We can always come by more once we start laying things out, right? But I kind of like that, you know, and then as far as this goes, like the same deal, right? We'll building level. Just make sure that red dot in the middle of the building is right in there. And let it finish the whole thing for this first plop down until it turns green. And then we could push this guy in a little bit if we wanted, right? Just because it's not going to be that hard to push it in a bit. What happened there? Oh, see, I'm out of leveling. Yeah, like I said, I was surprised. So in other words, see how it's stopped? That's good. I'm glad I could show you that. See, if we try to come here, you need a free bulldozer, right? Because we're too far away from that construction office to do any more. So again, if you're paying with money, you can go further, but that's good. So that gives us an idea. Now, by the way, you can use this tool, right? See, need an excavator. So now you can come by and need an excavator. Don't need an excavator, right? You know, to give you kind of a rough idea of where you can go to, right? So we could probably go a little further. Yeah, over here, need an excavator. So as far as that goes, like I'm just, you know, yep, need an excavator. It'll sort of do a little bit of it. Yeah, right. Does that make sense? So that it's a radius around, oops, let's zoom out a little bit. It's a radius around that guy there. So there you go. You can kind of see the arc of the radius right there, right? So if we want to go leveling any further, and I probably do at some point, I'm not going to do it in this video at all, but what I want to do now, and again, the video is getting a little bit longer than I already intended, so I think what I'm going to do is definitely cut it this time, but I'm just going to level. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to spend the next, I don't know, oops, pick a road. You know, I'm just going to spend the next half hour of my life just doing this. Maybe even less, we'll see. But this time I definitely will cut the video and just go like this. and try to be pretty even with it. It doesn't, you know, it's to your specification. But in other words, if I point at this line, then try to pick a very similar spot over here, right? Like each time, and that'll just give you a little bit better results. Like things will be more even without you having to do as much smoothing if I, you know, try to pick a similar line each time. And then what I'll do is just keep doing this. You know, when it comes to some of these real high areas, what I'll do is, like, you know, we might decide to level this off, like where it's really pretty steep. You can do one of two things. You could come across here if it was much higher than this. Yeah, and I might even do that anyway. Like you can just kind of come along here and take off, you know, the highest bits first. You know, it doesn't hurt. You don't have to be that accurate about it, but it makes the other tool a little bit easier, right? Because you're just taking off those, it's, you know, a little less likely to be red in a sense. Now again, this is a little borderline for wanting to do this, but see, it just takes that extra bit down, and you could, you know, as long as you don't level back up. Yeah, you don't want to be leveling up too much. There we go. See, we took the worst of it off. You know, probably could have come down a little lower over here, but you know, I think you guys get the idea there, right? Again, you know, it's not exacting in any way. You're just, everything you take off now is, you know, just needs to be taken off, right? So that way when you do things like this, you don't want to build up like that was, but so what happens is now when I go from here to here, it's all yellow, right? So that makes my life a little easier. That makes sense. And then the other, you know, again, depending on the room we need, we can take off some of this. Saying, here's what I'm talking about with it being, see how it's just too red? And you can get it by going like this, but sometimes I find it seems to be easier just to do what we did. And you can just sit there like this, just cutting away. You know, I mean, it's tedious. But again, watch a YouTube video and just sit here and, you know, put your wrist in a comfortable position. There you go. All right, well, let me cut it. Well, let me show you one more thing I'm going to do. It's just then we'll come across here, right? And then at some point here, we'll just have to decide. So there we go. See how we're filling some of that in and taking some of it down? By the time we get to this side, we'll start taking it down. And that's really kind of what you want to see, you know, even though we're doing it on a bigger scale in a way. Now, once we know one of these is level, right, we should be able to just do like this because we know that line's level. So it's just a matter of getting level lines. And you don't want to go too far over here in a lot of circumstances because you'll miss gaps. I think I went far enough. See how it's leaving yellow in the middle? So you just sort of want to be, you know, you want to go as far with your next roll out as you can. All right. So see how we missed that gap? And I don't know how much difference it makes if you miss gaps. Do it however you want. You know, have fun. Or not. Whatever floats your boat. So see, but if you just gotta go like this, as long as you... Now, by the way, on this one, it doesn't matter so much as long as you're on the level spot. Like, you don't need to worry too much about being in just the right spot or anything. There we go. All right, so let me cut it. When I come back, all of this will be taken down. I'm thinking it'll probably take me 10 or 15 minutes, I'm guessing. All right, I'll be right back.